And welcome to Coffee with the Councilors, July 2nd. And it's a very, very light day today, so it doesn't look like there's that many people concerns that are pressing today. So we'll start with Jenny, who's in the audience. What would you like
I'm
to
here
talk
in
about?
person today.
What would you like to talk about? Then we'll come back around.
Well, short-term rentals, of course. I thought, Haystack Heights, boy, they were out in force last night. I watched the meeting. They did a great job. So short-term rentals, and then also I agree with you about the S curves. It's like an accident waiting to happen.
Mhm. Oh, how do you Okay. Hi,
Hi, I'm Melissa Dasker.
Melissa Baxter.
Dasker, Dasker.
Oh, okay. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, nothing. I just wanted to know some of the counselors were.
Oh, okay, it was only two of the five here today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you and see if you have anything you want to ask. Or
Okay.
anything. Okay, and is there anybody online?
Betsy's online.
Hi, Betsy.
Good
And
morning.
Betsy,
Can you see me and do you have a screen somewhere there?
we can see you. Do you have anything, any
Um,
questions?
Well, no, it's not. Well, I have to say that two things. One is there are two elk calves with Spot still sleeping out my kitchen window, which is pretty sweet. And also, I'm curious to know when the watershed is going to reopen for walkers.
Watershed reopening, okay. And, you know what? I saw those calves yesterday.
Cool.
They were tiny. I thought they were deer at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh, yeah. Well, they get big
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I had to go rescue Anna this morning, who she was blocked on getting home because of the elk. And so I had to drive and pick her up. And as soon as I went out my drive, or as soon as I came into my driveway, one of the little ones was there and adults too, so.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
And Karen?
Carrie, one time, Tom Drudick had to show me how to cut through all the neighbors' backyards because I couldn't figure out how to get home. He said, he just pops out of the bushes and he said, here, come this way with me.
Karen? Karen was here. Karen, hi. Hi, Karen.
You're me, Karen.
Good morning. I'm just here to listen and support the discussion, answer any questions that might come up.
Okay, thank you. I think there is going to be a question for you, so. All right, let's go back to Ginny.
Short-term rentals, I thought it was a good discussion last night. I'm glad that you limited, which in reality does help our east of the highway, mostly full-time residents, you know, without not adding more. And I feel like in today's real estate market, there's a lot of houses for sale in Cannon Beach and going up for sale soon. And we want to keep those from becoming short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And I feel like across the country, companies have been buying up houses for investment purposes, so, and running them as short-term rentals. So I thought that was really plus. I'd also like to see the council stop owners from living in their ADUs and renting out their house, which they're able to do now. They can't rent out the ADU as a short-term rental, but they can rent out their house and stay in their ADU. And one of my neighbors does that. And then also on the limiting the licenses, and you know, the people who currently have them able to renew them every year, well, some of them probably aren't even active, you know, rentals. And do we want to, you know, only let people with active rentals reapply every year? I don't know, something to think about.
I mentioned,
Yeah.
inactivity
Yeah, I think we did.
clauses.
It's come up before.
That might be a good thing to add into the STR.
Yeah,
Uh,
but this loophole that, with the ADUs.
Right.
I are we on that with the code on it? Because
No.
we're all aware that that's.
No one's
Oh,
even,
no.
no one has actually addressed it in the housing thing, because they haven't really talked about STRs much, except that they don't want them. Because they believe that they cut down on the possibility of long-term rentals, but, or, you know,
The loophole is
Right.
they can build an ADU, but they can't have it be a short-term rental,
Right.
but then they turn around and
Live in
And-
it.
use it when they're renting out their house.
one way to stop that is, first of all, by lowering the amount of short-term rentals you allow, putting the cap on, that'll cut back on
Right.
that, but also you can just say, if you have an ADU on your property, you can't have any short-term rental on your
Right.
property, period.
Right, are they allowed, if they have a duplex, to do a short-term rental on half of it?
Right now, they could, but they'd have to get a license
Right.
and all that kind of stuff.
Right,
And I think under the new, housing requirements that are gonna be, proposed at the next housing
Uh-huh.
meeting, you cannot rent out a
right,
duplex short term. So now if someone's already grandfathered in to do
Right.
that, that's a
right.
different matter, then they'll just have to wait till their license expires.
Well, till they no longer renew it or it changes his hands or whatever.
Yeah, the problem, I wasn't real happy about the idea of allowing renewal every year, but I also understand that you can't do
Right,
anything about that because they had an expectation that they would be able to rent it, and you can't,
right,
if you remove that, it's sort of like breaking a contract.
right, I
It's a
agree.
contract, so so I don't think we can do anything about that, but I think limiting really will cut back
Right, I think so too.
tremendously.
Especially when you're 125.
Yeah. Well, my 125 at this point isn't happening, but 160 is an improvement.
Yeah, 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 so I thought it was really productive discussion. One other thing that we've talked about before is only all short-term rentals have to be managed by a local property manager.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
And I was disappointed, I thought one of the HTEC people said they called the property management company and just got rushed off.
Which surprised me.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I have not,
Right,
that's not been my experience,
right,
so I'd love to know who
which
it
one
was.
was, right. I think it might have been the newer one.
Yeah, because in the past, Ryan's,
I know.
no, they're right on it, so. There's a fellow in my neighborhood who manages 3 or 4 short-term rentals, and he does a great job. So he's a local guy who lives here, and that's, partly how he makes his income is by
Right.
doing that. He's not one of the big companies, but he does a good job. Then might be someone else who isn't doing a good job, so you just don't know.
Well, and I think we talked before about having to have 2 phone numbers also, not just one, because what if they are at a Mariners game or, in
Right.
Portland or.
And good Daniel's here now, but, so short-term rentals are required to have, somebody local. that-
One person, it'd be nice to have 2.
It would be, if you don't have a property management
Right.
company, then to
Right.
have 2 local representatives.
Right,
That's another thing we could add in.
How do Airbnb and VRBO
Well, they
deal
have,
with that?
they would have to designate 2 local people
well,
in.
now it's 1,
Right,
but
in the town, within the radius of whatever.
like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I missed the initial question.
If you have a contact for your short-term rental, do they have to be within 10 minutes or
I
something?
believe it's within 10 miles.
10 miles.
Yeah, so then for Airbnb, they'd have to have 2, or VRBO. I don't really wanna ban
Right,
them from doing business in the town, I don't know if that's necessary until there's a real problem with them that's really identifiable.
Do you know how people deal with that? Is it just like?
Yeah, oftentimes if they're using a service like VRBO or Airbnb, what will end up happening, they'll just have a local person, a friend or a neighbor, that will service just a local contact.
And then the S-curves.
it's just crazy up there. I feel like all those people must think it's the best place to park in town. And in reality, it's the best place to park if you wanna take a picture, but it's the worst place to park if you wanna go down to the beach.
Especially with a stroller and your children.
And
Toddlers.
people with mobility issues.
Yeah, I know, it's scary, and I don't understand why. I guess I don't understand why we're not more aggressive about taking action on that. Who's in charge of those experts, the road? Is it the city?
Not entirely sure if anybody who's in charge, but
Well,
like the
if
city.
you wanted to make a change on the S curves, like changing the speed limit or anything to do with the parking on it. Does the city have jurisdiction over that?
So modifying the speed limit through there, I believe we may have to work with ODOT on that, just to get a speed reduction. A bit easier to do on streets that are sort of adjacent to those main thoroughfares. But that's something that, Public Works is long period for.
Yes.
Karen, whose responsibility, is for the S curve? Who's responsible for the S curve?
Speed limit specifically. Karen, did you hear the question?
I am. I was just waiting to see if you wanted me to say something. Public Works is responsible for any changes that are made to the streets, but they have to be a legal enforceable change. So we work together with the PD and planning to collaborate on any changes that are requested that come in, but we don't do it on a case by case. We wait and see if there's a trend that is developing that is creating a safety hazard for the public or vehicle traffic. And then we collaborate about the issue and decide what the change is going to be. But it's got to be something that is enforceable by the police, and it's got to be based on best practice road standards. And so as much of this is concerning to us, it doesn't necessarily mean that it deems some sort of a change, but it's worthy of a discussion. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it, but yes, curves are a different kind of an animal in the sense that some of those properties come out almost to the asphalt on the street. So to create a safe walking path off of the asphalt is not always possible along there. This is why you hear me complain about setback encroachments with some construction, because it really pinches the amount of space that we have out there just to maintain our infrastructure if there's a failure, and for the public to safely walk. We can't mow a strip along the right of way if the private property comes all the way out to the asphalt. So it's a little tricky along there. We do the best we can to create at least a foot or two of safe walking path off of the asphalt, but there are some properties that come out very, very close to the street.
Well, what would it take to get it on the agenda as an item about lowering the speed limits on the S curve? So that's a first step.
I think the first step would be for us to do a real traffic study along there, that the traffic engineer actually looks at both vehicle and pedestrian traffic, because what we're really talking about here is pedestrian traffic. And so he or she has to evaluate that along with the vehicle traffic that travels in that area, and make an assessment for us if a change is really warranted, whether it's seasonal or all year, or if there's some thing that we can do temporarily during the summer when the traffic is the worst, or if it deems some sort of a permanent change. But that isn't something that staff should be just doing willy-nilly. It should have a real traffic study. So if there's ever an accident there as a result of the changes that we make, our insurance companies can protect us against whatever occurs.
Yeah, if you're making it safer for pedestrians and drivers, I don't see how a change lowering the speed limit is going to cause an accident. But I mean, I'll do the traffic study for you for free. I mean, I will the assessment. I just have to stand there on the S curves for a period of 48 hours, during the peak of summer, and you got your traffic study. I mean, there's so many people parking and walking on those curves with children, and like I said last night, council meeting with strollers. I just don't, how do we get a traffic study done?
Well, I don't think it's just a speed limit problem. I feel like those cars are a problem. They're unloading and loading, so the
That's true.
doors open in traffic. And last night, there was 2 cars that were jockeying to get in tight spots. You know, so the traffic was back way up as they were jockeying back and forth to get in these tight spots. So it's not only.
Are you a legal spot?
Why not do not park signs? I mean, why not? make it
Yeah.
not Park signs.
I would say they were legal spots, but it's not
There's these
legal.
ones right at the top of Case Dead.
Why
Walks
not,
in every way.
why not make it do not park there?
Most of it is no parking.
Well, but one side is, but not the other
Yeah,
side.
the choice is to make it a no parking zone
Right.
at all, but that would be, you know, I mean. With parking as tight as it is in this
Yeah.
town, that would take away probably, what, 25 parking,
I mean, they could be large
You'll make
spots, so
squeeze in.
they're a little roomier.
you know? Or, but a first step would be to have people going slower. I mean, that would, you know, that would start the process of making it safer. It wouldn't solve the problem by any means, but it would start the process. So how do you do that?
Start the process, would be the council flash direction set to do a traffic study. And then what things you're concerned about would be the speed and parking and the kind of thing. And then we would go ahead and get that going.
Okay, so can that be on the agenda, Jen?
And well, one thing, the police department, we do have a portable radar unit that we can put out there to collect data over a period of a couple days before it has to be taken down and recharged. So we can get some good data of what the speed limit or what the speeds look like up there between, let's say, Friday and Monday, over the next month.
Because that'd be great. I mean, it might turn out that the speed is not the issue at all,
Right.
that everybody is going slow because they're terrified of hitting somebody, you know? So it might be that it is, there has to be something else done, like no parking.
So just because we only have one of those units, I want to make sure that that data is being collected where it should be, where on the S curves or sort of speed.
You know, where the walkway is down to the rock, you know, the stairs, right to the south of that seems to be where the most of the
Okay.
traffic is.
So the straight section right by what your salon is.
Around that area, I would say, where I see all the people walking in the park. And then they cross the street, of course, there's no crosswalk there, so they're crossing right into traffic, you know, to,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes they can't see someone coming around the corner. So, you know,
Did you say south or north of the stairs?
I would say south of the stairs where it starts to get urban.
I think both. I mean, actually right at the stairway, I mean, where there's the legal parking, I will use it occasionally when I'm doing the wildlife rescue,
Right,
to go pick up a bird or something.
Right.
And I know that you have to be very careful crossing the road there, cause
it's
you know,
not.
they do come around the corner and they're going too fast. So, it is precarious, right there.
So
But I wonder how much of the issue is illegal parking.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's maybe parking that people are, you know, it says no parking, but I'm just gonna get out of my car and take a picture.
Right.
And you know, what can we do about that?
Or I'm gonna stop right in the middle of the street, in a lane of traffic, take a picture. And then a car's coming around the corner, you know, at 30 miles an hour. I mean,
It's really not great. I could suggest much better.
Well, now there's a
areas.
fence there.
I would take your word for it, you're great to talk about.
So Betsy's had her hand up for quite a while.
Well, that's
Yes,
it.
I have. Hi, you guys. I just love these conversations about parking in cars because, you know, it's always like trying to put a gallon of water into a quart jar. You know, it just is not going to work no matter what we do. But there are a couple of things I've brought up once before and probably maybe more than once, excuse me, which is park use parking only. Again, I'm seeing a lot of cars parked where it says park use parking only and not one person in the park. I don't know if there's any way to monitor that because somebody might say, oh, I was in the park, but I just ran across the street to get an ice cream cone or something. So there's that. And then right before COVID, there was some conversation getting started about possibly some kind of management of parking in the presidential streets where there's so many people who don't have off-street parking in the older cabins. I don't know if that's something the council wants to try to address or not, but there are, like at Ursula Le Guin's old house, for instance, on Washington Street, you know, all those along there, except for the new house on the corner that has all the really unattractive no parking signs stuck up all over the place. Everybody else doesn't have, there's no parking there, and that's a pretty easy access to the beach. Anyway, something to think about. And then also, this is a question, I guess for Daniel maybe, is, you know, say down by the fresh foods market, it would appear that most of the employees, possibly, is that who that is, are parking on the street, on the west side of the street, across the street from the market. And is there any way to, and I see it really actually north of the S curves too, where people are parked, but they're kind of parked so that it's pretty impossible really to safely get between the traffic line and the parked car. And they're not far enough off the street, I guess is what I'm thinking about. And I don't know if there's any regulation that says you have to leave X number of feet between the traffic line and where your car is, or if there's any way to manage that. So those are my parking things I'd like to have people think about. Thank you.
Yeah, so with those vehicles that are parked down there, as far as I'm aware, the standard is that they cannot be on the roadway or within any bicycle lane. So down there, let's say by Fresh Foods, where they're parking in that gravel or on the road shoulder, there isn't an established sidewalk or bicycle lane. So as long as they're outside of the roadway, they are legally parked. That's something where there'd be some development or some sort of infrastructure needed to be added to require them to park further over, some sort of like bike lane that is installed and painted or something of that nature.
I don't think the road's wide enough, at least when Joy Gannon was the public works director, it seemed like there was a kind of a push for more designated bike path lanes to be painted. And just because of the, whatever the, you know, Karen knows this name, I can't remember what it's called, but the, you know, they have to have a certain dimension, and there's not enough width on the roadway to accomplish that in a lot of Cannon Beach, which is too bad because more and more people are riding bikes. But Karen, what do you think about that?
I'm sorry, Betsy, can you
I
repeat
agree.
that?
I couldn't hear everything you were saying, Betsy, but you're right. There has to be a certain amount of clearance or margin, if you will, for that to be doable and legal. But again, that can be evaluated in a traffic study relative to the pedestrian aspect of it.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, is it possible to get the discussion of the traffic study for the S curves at least on the agenda?
Yeah, so, it would need to go to August. The August work session is gonna be pretty full, so the August 5th meeting though is really light, but that's one that Jerry cannot be at.
There's a big fat elk eating my apple tree. Hey, go away. Where did you come from? How did you get in my yard, you rascal? Oh my gosh, I'm thinking, why is my apple tree whipping around like that? Now I know. Now she's stuck. She can't figure it out. You go back away. However you got in here, go away. Excuse me, I have to go deal with my wildlife problem. Now she's eating my roses. Oh my God.
Well,
So the August meeting, we could put it on and.
Yeah, the work session's pretty full already, so I was wondering if we could do it on the August 5th meeting just to start the discussion. I know Jerry may not be here though, but it's just the start of the discussion. And it would be a discussion item, not a voting item. So it's, if you guys want to do that. Or we can wait and do the September work session.
Which is what day?
Oh, you won't be here for September work session, so, yeah,
Arm wrestle, see who's gonna win.
uh, if you want, we could also, if we put it on the fifth, Carrie could provide input before the meeting,
Okay,
if that works.
I'm sorry, what dates are we talking about?
August fifth,
Definitely out of town on the
could you
fifth.
provide some input before the meeting?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
so we'll put it on the August fifth, and we'll see if we can get some data from the police department. The police department does have some good data from putting the machine there in the past. So we may be able to pull some of the older information, from the experts and,
It's true, but I think things are getting worse now. I think people are going faster and madder and more impatient and, that's how it appears to me. I mean, you know.
yeah, so we'll put it on the agenda, we'll include the data that the police department have, current and old. And any information Karen has to share, you guys can start the discussion.
Okay, thanks.
I also think parking is something that, you know, when we talk about parking, everybody talks about parking. Everybody says we need to do something. More time spaces, paid parking,
Parking kitty, the whole idea of having, you know.
and the whole, then are we just placing them to communities and do we need to look at, resident only parking, at least in some areas? And it just is. It's a problem.
And
Uh,
I'll tell you, when during the upcoming housing meeting, one of the give backs for higher density on property will be no requirement for parking.
right,
So if that actually happens, if this goes through, this ordinance, and if, you know, people do build more density on the lot and smaller houses and more of them, then there's gonna be a bigger parking problem because all those people will be permitted to park on the street. So,
or if we have any success at all in reducing the number of part-time residences and they become full-time residences. You know, that's gonna make that issue even worse. And
right, so
That's
that's,
why it probably, you know, is one of the top 2 or 3 things that, you know, people talk about.
it is.
And I just don't see us moving forward with anything.
Yeah, I mean, even the whole idea of one, it keeps coming up and then disappearing, about maybe having the parking kitty paid parking downtown, and then you have a permit for residents. It just disappears, it's sort of, and I don't know, what is with that, Bruce, what's the deal with that?
Parking study,
Paid parking is just one.
changing the parking to consider paid parking or timed parking and or.
Yeah, that's something, we actually have 3 parking spaces, copies, and that out to everybody. And these kind of things have been discussed, but nobody's gonna be in charge of
And
it.
that's what we're saying, is that, Jen?
I think where we left it off was the last time we talked about the TSC priorities, we were going after the low hanging fruit first. And those were the items that council selected to go after, and I think it was things like the, Hemlock Sunset intersection, those kind of things. And so I think those are the directions we had to work on first. So I think that would probably be our next round when we start tackling the bigger items. So in the fall, we should probably put the TSC, and I can't remember in the future how for agendas, because you know, we'll plug things in, like, let's bring up this discussion again. So I'll make sure it is up for discussion in the fall.
I feel the same way, that it seems like we keep doing parking studies and then doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd just be
Yeah.
nice to, you know, try something, to make a move, to,
And then the data we have is outdated, because things are getting more congested, not less congested, so, you know.
so you're gonna see how we can keep that discussion.
Yeah, I'll throw it on one of the fall work sessions, probably September, October,
Okay,
and then we can see where we're at with what we were doing last time. There's a few small things that we were gonna work on, and it was just low hanging fruit. And then we can start discussing what you guys wanna see your priorities, so. Like if it's parking and kind of, what do you need? To get there?
and while we're going through this list, there was a question from Betsy. Oh, I know is she back? Or is she still chasing out? Well, wait a few minutes, Karen, because oh, there you are. Betsy had a question about the watershed reopening.
Aaron can probably answer that.
Yeah. That's a Karen question, I think.
I didn't hear the question.
Why are you asking, Betsy?
I think Karen has a hard time hearing me. Could you repeat the question for her, please?
She wondered when about the watershed reopening.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're on the last phase of the HDPE line pull right now. So I would say probably, I don't know, maybe another month, because they have to get done, but then they've got to kind of put the roads and everything back the way it was, so it's safe for people to walk up in there. So we've got another month before it's going to be open. And that's, us assuming there's no delays in this final phase.
Thank you.
Yep.
And does Julie have her hand raised or not? Did she?
No.
Oh, okay.
Something
Julie
to say about
have
parking
anything?
studies.
Well, I was wondering if Julie had something she wanted to discuss. Are you there, Julie? Okay. Maybe not.
Okay, you can go back to the story.
So, is there anything else that we need, Melissa?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Is there anything you're any interested, or are you curious, what do you like to know?
I guess we were just curious to meet the counselors and see what happened here, but with this discussion, I was curious about a couple of things, like what is the fee for the no parking zones? Yeah, parking violations, is that like $25, I think it used to be?
And parking citations, except with a few exceptions, are $50.
Okay.
Except the, parking and handicap zone, of course, set by Oregon State is, I believe, $165 for first offense and $440 for second.
Cause in Portland, I know, but we've talked about this before, going on our evening walks on Ocean, it's, there's always so many cars in the no parking zone right around Surf Sand Resort. And, if you're coming from the Portland area, the parking there is $25 an hour. So to some people,
That's paid parking.
$50, yeah, for all day.
Yeah.
So, one suggestion would be, which I'm sure would be extremely costly, but I don't know, is like state on the no parking signs, what the fee would be and raise it. You raise the fee, I don't know how that would happen, but.
Well, I think, what does it take to raise the fine for council? Council again, because actually I thought about that too. I didn't know exactly how much it was, but I figured it was low enough that it was a cost benefit analysis. You sort of say, oh, $50 for the day, that's a
And
bargain.
now that it is a busy week, I can't think what street it is, but it's the street, north of Surf Sand right there. I mean, the stairs going down to the beach, it'll be a row of cars, so it's not like it's just on the sides of the road, it's, across. So,
Yeah, no,
and then again, that could apply to the S curves, deterring people like, wow, I gotta find. With social media, people will be blasting that, don't park in the no parking zone in Cannon Beach.
because you get a
They have a
big
fine.
fine.
Yes.
Daniel, did you just say that there's some state limitations on the?
That's just regarding handicap zones.
Okay.
I'm not sure what limitations there would be on the city setting our own fines, but
You're able to set them, it's just by resolution, because they increased them from 25 to 50, back when Stan and Robin were still on council.
Okay, well, now 50 is nothing.
Right.
It really is nothing.
That's a good
Now,
expense for.
Can we put that with the discussion about the S curves is traffic related? And you went to your opinion, so you can have read on that. Is that okay?
Sure.
And so, and then, the other, thing is, like, this is a sort of dumb question I'm gonna ask. But where does the money go from fines? What, does it go to the state in Cannon Beach? Can it be used for specific things, or must it be used for specific things? Or can it go into the general fund, or can it, be used towards paying for a parking study?
So I believe it goes directly back into the general fund because the police department is funded by the general fund. We can confirm with Stan, but I believe it goes right back into the general fund.
Because really, I mean, there's many reasons, that probably for a parking study. Actually, Melissa, thank you for bringing that up, because I thought about that, it never came to the top of my head. Yeah, question.
Dale just was suggesting this,
Go ahead.
speed bumps.
Oh, that's a different matter.
Yeah.
And Karen, could you address the speed bump issue? Because I've heard that raised quite a few times. People wondering why we don't have speed bumps or what it would take to have speed bumps. And I think Karen sort of has some knowledge about that.
It's been brought up before in years past, even brought to council, and it's just not something that has ever been accepted and given staff any direction to go forward on. Some of the speed bump requests were for gravel streets, which is just not something that we can maintain gravel streets when we have speed bumps on. It's not realistic. And that's where the requests have really been focused, because a lot of those streets are the streets that people tend to cut from Hemlock over to Spruce to avoid the traffic on Hemlock, and they're cutting down presidential streets that are gravel. You can't put speed bumps on a gravel street and expect the gravel street to be maintained effectively for water flow and whatnot. So it's just not realistic. As far as speed bumps on any other area of Cannon Beach where we have paved streets, I mean, that's a discussion that's been brought up to council, and it just has not been embraced and given direction for staff to act upon that.
Okay, I thought that there might be something to do with the fire department, but they don't, Betsy?
Well, yeah, in years past, when that issue was brought up, it was actually the fire department that was really concerned about speed bumps, slowing down the fire truck, which brings me to presidential streets and some of the narrower streets when people are parked on both sides. What is the minimum width that needs to be maintained so that a fire truck could get through? Because sometimes the streets just don't look wide enough to me for a fire truck when they're
Our
parked.
presidential streets are marked with one side of the street not parking, and the other side of the street is legal to park. And so all of those presidential streets are marked that way. None of them are parking on both sides of the street at this time.
Laurel isn't one of the presidents, but on that street that runs between Washington and First, there's parking on both sides of the street. And thinking about my friend Betty's house, which is, sometimes there's a lot of cars parked there on both sides of the street. I think the residents have preferred to not limit it because they'd like to be able to park by their house. And usually it's not a problem, but really those streets around, Washington, Adams, they just really clog up in the summer with people desperate for a place to park. So
most of our presidential streets are not even 20-foot wide. So that's what presents the parking challenges and why we have the signage the way we do. And it is a collaborative effort between the PD, the fire department, and planning whenever there's any kind of traffic change whatsoever within the community to look at all aspects of it. But we have streets that are marked such people just don't abide by the signage, and they don't park properly, which lends itself to the congestion. East Harrison is a good example of that. So.
Right. Well, hopefully now that the bicycle patrol is out, that could be something they could be paying attention to.
Yeah, these are definitely seasonal issues that seem to show themselves much more prominently in the summer than they do any other time of the year. If we do a traffic study, they can consider things like what OPRD has done in some of the state park area where they do things seasonally. When the tourists are really heavy, they will block certain areas from access or parking because it causes traffic challenges, whether they're coming in or going out of a parking lot or just walking along the highway. So that's all part of the discussion when we're doing a traffic study that we should be looking at if we move forward with that candidate.
And maybe you said this already, Karen, but is there a current traffic study underway?
Not till I'm given the request to do so. I don't have one actively underway.
Okay, thank you.
And the speed bump issue, I mean, I'm thinking of Fifth would be a perfect place for speed bumps. And I also think that, you know, parts of Hemlock, especially, I see where I really see a lot of, well, the S curves, I don't know how speed bumps would work there, it might send someone right up.
No, I've seen rather than the traditional bump, there's like the 3 grooves in the road that when you hit them, and it's not really moving you up and down, but it's getting your attention.
Might be good, cause a lot of times people in the S curves are slowing down because they're not watching the road, they're looking at the view.
Right, it's hard to.
That would really wake them up and make them more
Yeah.
alert to look at the road.
Point. And also South Tolovana, from the Fresh Foods South, speeding there is insane. I mean, I've walked along there and people just, they sort of get past downtown and the grocery store and then they just shoot down that street like, 45 miles an hour. And I just, the speed bumps there would be great as well and would not, I mean, it would seem to me to be fairly, easy to do. So, or as easy as a speed bump is, I mean, but anyway, I
I seem
think
like
that,
that grooved pavement solution would not have as many issues with emergency vehicles.
I don't know how much that costs, or could we add that? to the-
I, least to slow people down.
Okay.
I thought that was gonna be.
But I also think those flashing signs that show your speed, that could be useful around the school, because it's 20 there.
You mean over by down, yeah.
Yeah, I know the academy.
Oh, the academy, yeah. Yeah, and that's where people start to speed up a lot,
Because it's 30 until
Right.
the school.
yeah.
So Karen, there are no additional hurdles to considering a speed bump or those kind of grooved, lines in the pavement that kind of alert people.
Yeah. I've added that to the note of everything that's being discussed relative to changes in, traffic patterns or pedestrian access or safety. And so again, I just think that the professionals need to come and take a look at this from liability and every aspect that we may not be considering here, which would include first responder traffic flow and response time as well, and let them weigh in on it. They do this every day in their lives and we don't, so they can bring things to our attention might not be thinking about. But I've added it on there.
I kind of feel like signs and signage are not, they don't always bring awareness, right? How much people ignore them.
Yes.
Right, so
Yeah.
bumps or something get in your mind and correct the behavior, right? So
Yeah, I mean, we can change the speed limit on the S curve, but that doesn't mean people.
unless you're sitting there every day with the radar gun tagging people, then, do it for a couple of years, then it will pay off. But to change behavior, little bumps or something would wake people up,
Yeah.
right? It like triggers your mind, like, oh, wait, I'm driving too fast, or get your mind back into the road.
I do think something has to happen, because I mean, as a town, we're kind of unnoticed that there are some safety issues. And we've got to address it.
But I mean, have you had a lot of accidents on the S curves or?
Weird.
I know, right? So,
It's
so then what? I know, think it's a problem, but it's not really a problem,
like
yet,
the
right?
pedestrians downtown, you
Yeah.
just think that
They can walk.
it's
everywhere.
unbelievable people aren't getting hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't go fast enough
Yeah.
to do any damage because.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one recently.
One of my concerns is that if we do restrict parking along the sides of the S-curves there, regardless of what the speed limit is set at, people will feel safer to go faster. Because the road has been more constrained there, people, I feel, slow down just naturally, they feel less comfortable.
Or it could fly on us at any moment.
What happens is that people will know that, will feel that they're in a dangerous situation. And their attention will go up, whatever. Here all the time, there was almost an accident, this person almost got hit. But it's because of, people sensing that there is that kind of a problem that they need to be aware of. And there's a place, I think it was in Germany, that there was a big plaza, they had all kinds of signs and everything going through it, they would have accidents there. Finally, they took out all of the signals, everything. And just let you go wherever you wanted to go, and accidents went way down. And what it was, is that I gotta pay attention in this situation. And so people's awareness does go up. It makes things that almost happen, but, we've not had, people being hit, we've not had car accidents, things like that. Because people are driving differently, although sometimes it seems like they're not. But that's just something that changes in us when, we're in a situation when.
Most people,
Are,
not all people, though.
right, yeah, I think, yeah, I can't say all people, but, a lot of people, it does change that.
Well, yeah, I think that might, and I don't think Germany is litigious a society as we are. So if someone was to get hurt, and it was because we created a dangerous situation or allowed a dangerous situation to exist. In the United States, there'd be lawsuits all over the place regarding that, whereas in a lot of European countries, they don't, people just don't get sued like that. They don't worry about it as much. Italy, you can walk along huge drop off cliffs with no guardrail, nothing. And you have a path this wide, and if you were to trip, you'd fall to your death. But no one's, you can't sue about it, so they let that dangerous thing exist, and most people people don't fall off because those who are afraid don't walk, so I mean, I just don't. I mean, I don't think that works as well here as it works other places where people, here people sue people all the time. So if someone were to get hurt, the city could be sued. They would really quickly for allowing a dangerous condition to exist. So,
Back to speed bumps in Anchorage, they have to take them up in the winter because of the snow clouds.
well, we don't have snow.
Yes.
So,
Can I make a quick correction? I gave you the wrong date earlier. You're not meeting August 5th, we're meeting August 4th. Because that August 5th is National Night Out.
oh,
So just
okay.
in case
Thanks.
clarification, I did not the wrong date.
Okay,
And I think I can make that one.
well, that'd be great.
I thought the police report on planning for the fire for the fourth was really good. It sounded like there's good
Yeah.
coverage and really well thought out.
Yeah, I agree, I think. And I think there's been some publicity and, hopefully,
There's already been firecrackers, so.
yeah, I know, I think that we're gonna. I think the desire might be there more strongly this year, I'm not gonna go into it, but, yeah, so. Okay, are there any other questions or concerns or anything, because we have. We have Karen here, we have Daniel here, so,
Lois Moore was here
yeah,
earlier and had to leave. And one of her concerns, that she mentioned to Bruce, and Bruce said he would follow up, but just for Karen, they're right nearby in front of Northwest by Northwest at the crosswalk, goes over to the park. I guess those hedges are getting kind of high so that you can't see a child crossing the crosswalk there, and she was concerned about safety there. Bruce mentioned he would check it out, but, we'll just put that on the radar.
I will mention it to AJ. I know he was waiting until the blooms had kind of matured before he cut everything back. Everybody gets disappointed when we start hacking on stuff that just freshly bloomed out, but I'll tell him for safety, we need to just go ahead and do it.
Okay, is there anybody else has anything they'd like to discuss? Okay, well, happy 4th of July, safe 4th of July, and, you guys work.
Quiet 4th of July.
I think we've got a great team and a good plan.
Good. Right, those chickens.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Go watch those